Okay, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Peter, AK3YE. Hopefully this time we'll have some audio. So I just thought I'd come on, do a quick live session, a bit of general Q&A. No question too simple. Ask me anything about amateur radio. And hello to PD1JDW. We do, and Chris, good to have you back. Yes, the audio, bit embarrassing to say what it was, but anyway, problem with too many cables and things. So so good that audio is back, and a very simple problem to fix. Anyway, we've got 6, 7 people on, PD1JDW, and hello to you. Yeah, I just checked the times, and it's about what is it? I think it's about 6 p.m. in parts of the United States, Friday evening. And as for using a lamp, well, this is so bright that it is a form of signaling system. In fact, if I just look through the hole there, anyway, yes, this has been one of my most recent construction experiments. And I'll just turn the lamp off. That's what it is normally. So yeah, bit better lighting here at long last. And early in the morning, no, it's 8:19 a.m. So not too early at all, and even daylight outside. And yes, we could have had optical communication. Now, if you've just joined, I'm Peter, AK3YE, VK3YE, and we'll kick off very soon the various Q&As. But to comment on Chris's thing about optical communication, have a look at VK3AML on YouTube. Chris, he has recently done a optical communication, him and some other amateurs, officially from Victoria to Tasmania. He went to a place called Deal Island in the Bass Strait, which is technically in Tasmania, and made contact with people on the mainland in Victoria. Will there be, okay, we have a question, will there be a 27 megahertz antenna? Will there be a 27 megahertz antenna? I suppose you have to build one, and the simplest antenna to build for 27 megahertz is a dipole, and that is, or the wavelength of 27 megahertz is about 11 meters. So it will be about 5 meters from end to end, or 2.75 meters from the center, give or minus a few centimeters. Just get some coax cable, 50 ohm coax cable going to radio. That's the feed line, and you can have a wire either side, one connecting to the middle and the other connecting to the braid of the cable. And for CB radio, you're probably better to have that mounted vertically or near vertical, because so you can work mobile stations. So that's about the simplest antenna you can build for 27 megahertz. There is a formula. Just look up a dipole formula, half-wave dipole, and that will give you the formula. I think it's 143 divided by frequency. So 143 divided by 27 will give you a bit over 5 meters from end to end. So that's a very simple 27 megahertz antenna. Though if you had a design for any 28 megahertz antenna, just multiply the dimensions up a bit, make them about let's see, a few percent bigger for 27 megahertz. Whatever, 27 megahertz antenna will be just slightly bigger than 28. So take any 28 megahertz design. There are some, scale them up to 27 megahertz. And yep, the 468 formula works for feet, or 143 for meters. And I think meters is a better thing for antennas, because we normally talk about wavelengths in meters. So why don't we talk about antenna dimensions in meters as well? Okay, well, there's 9 people on, quite a few questions. So yeah, a few people heading off to bed or getting on with the day, which I'll be doing as well. We've got a few things on today. There's the WIA AGM, Wireless Institute of Australia, so people can watch that on YouTube. I think that starts at about 11. And also after that, there's the VHF Field Day, also sponsored by the WIA. So they've actually got 2 of their events partially clashing. But there's the VHF UHF Field Day this afternoon and tomorrow morning. I've done some previous videos on field days. And hello, Andy. How many kilos of sand would you say are inside your FT817? No idea, and I'm not going to pull the 817 apart to find out. Okay, question PD1JDW, starting with learning to send Morse. Is it better to start with a straight key or go with a paddle? Well, the first thing is people say it's better to start with listening Morse rather than sending, so that you know that the Morse is well sent. You can get computer program, 18 feet for 11 meters, yep, and the old mobiles were 9 feet long as a quarter wave on the vehicle. And that they would have been a good antenna, but they would have scraped a lot of trees and service station fluorescent lights and all that sort of thing. So yeah, most people would go a bit smaller. Getting back to the Morse, yeah, better to do all your learning with listening first. There's slow Morse transmissions. Here in Australia, we have a beacon at the top end of 80 meters. There's programs. I think G4FON rings a bell. So look that up as a Morse program, but there are others. There's a service. I think it's still going. It's a website that you can go to, and it sends news, world news items or something in Morse code. So listen first. Start off with your, there's different ways to learn Morse. You can start off with your basic letters. Some people say EISH, which is all your dots, and TMO, which is your dashes. It's a sound language, so better not to learn it visually. That was a problem that I had. There were 2 conversions I had to do. I first of all heard the Morse and I wrote it down in dots and dashes, and then I visually translated it, which is inefficient. It took many, many years to get over that habit. SKCC, yep, that's a good basic, a lot of Morse people on there. Is there a particular antenna design that stands out for you? Good question. I've tried a lot of them, a lot on my website, also in my 2 books, hand-carried QRP antennas and more hand-carried QRP antennas. Most important things for, I suppose, with antennas, first of all, real estate. Then you've got the surrounding environment. Then you've got various band conditions, and then the antenna's important after that. In relation to 18 feet is a dipole. End-to-end 18 feet is a half wavelength dipole on 11 meters. And also W1AW from the ARRL sends Morse news in slow Morse. Now, if you don't have you'll need an 80 meter receiver for that, or I think W1AW transmits on 80 meters, possibly also on other bands as well. You'll be able to hear it very well within North America. It'll be a very strong signal. If you don't have a dedicated amateur receiver, have a look at Kiwi SDR. It's an online receivers, and you can look at receivers all around the world, and you can listen. You can basically tune HF via the internet. So that's one way you could listen to W1AW, even if you don't have an HF receiver. So just pick one that's within, say 500 miles, away. That's a good distance that you'll hear them as a strong signal on a band like 80 and 40 meters. Okay, well, we've got 17 people on, which is good. If you've just joined, I'm Peter, AK3YE, and also VK3YE, and you can ask me anything on any topic of amateur radio with a special focus on beginner questions. Yep. Now I do have, I did promise on the introductory slide Echo Link, so I am on Echo Link. I've just got the mobile phone here. Now I could possibly go to a conference. That might be better. I'll just find any conference that's we could have sort of a crossband between Echo Link and this and YouTube. Oh, here we are. We've got one called Friends North America. Yeah, there's not. So on Echo Link, if you're on Echo Link, you might even hear your audio coming through here. This is Friends North America. Okay. I've been messing around, as you can see, with the varying lighting here, with improving illumination. I'm still holding the light with my hand. I still need to get a proper tripod for the microphone. But yeah, it's been fun experimenting with these LED strips. This particular one is a daylight type. If I want, I can either face the LEDs to me like this. I can have the camera in the middle. That's quite an interesting effect. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Well, this is one. You can actually vary the brightness, and that's dazzling there. That's a bit better. Well, this has been my latest project, and I might do a video of it. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've never bought these before, but strips of LEDs. Just hold them up to the camera so you can get an idea. The idea of the hole in the middle was for me to poke the camera through if needed. And anyway, there's about 200 LEDs on this. I think a reel cost about $17 or something. Anyway, they're daylight colored LEDs, and what I did, I'll just turn this around. Hang on. This, the lighting isn't very good, but it's only 3 components. A potentiometer, so you can vary the brightness, like that, and a FET, a BUZ71A, a nice strong MOSFET, and an electrolytic capacitor. Anyway, this is now bouncing the light off the wall behind me, which I think is a better light. Okay, just having a look at questions. Okay, there's a couple of questions from Neville on the OzQRP MDT. Thinking of adding an SI5351. Not sure with the receive bandpass filter. Yeah, you could have something like a switch for the bandpass filter. Like if you've got the 40 meter MDT, you could very simply switch in an extra capacitor and get it to resonate on 80 meters. Or yeah, the MDT is a fairly narrow bandwidth. I imagine that, I can't remember. Does it have a tuned circuit, a selective tuned circuit in there or not? Well, certainly it's got the low pass filter. Oh yeah, you mentioned it, the receive band pass filter. Yes, there will be a, you'll need to switch that, and also the low pass filter. you'll need to switch that between 80 and 40 meters. And you've also got the possibility of noise coming from the DDS VFO, so make sure that that is clean. It's almost maybe better off to build something from scratch and leave the MDT as is. You could put them inside a cheap stainless steel mixing bowl and cover in front. Yeah, translucent grease-proof paper. Yeah, I think, and put them on a boom mic stand. Yeah, I did try a tripod. Now, the problem is when I had the tripod behind me, of course the light was behind me, and that's not very good. So you have to have the light in between the wall and the camera. Mixing bowl. Mixing bowl also produces some quite interesting effects on audio as well when you try and talk into it. Now, moving to the Philippines, I was about to buy a 705 for WinLink until I saw the data dead zone around there. Yeah, 4,000 kilometers for QRP. Yeah, I'm not sure how WinLink compares with data, with CW. Like 4,000 kilometers, you can work CW with QRP. I wouldn't say reliably. If you had a good antenna, then yes. But yeah, you might want to go for a bit higher power if you want reliable communication. J72 IMS. I don't think I can attach the metal mast. Yeah, I assume you're talking about dipoles and things. Yeah, if you had a vertical dipole then and a metal mast, then the mast might interact with it. And we have 18 people watching, and if you've just joined, I'm Peter, AK3YE and VK3YE, and you can ask me anything. If you are in the United States, a particular ebook that I've written could be useful. It's called Ham Radio Get Started. So it's basically an introductory guide to amateur radio. Doesn't help you much with passing the test, the technician, general or advanced, but it's a lot of the stuff. Once you get your call sign and you've got your brand new technician license, then Ham Radio Get Started is the book. It's got a lot of things you can do with the tech license, a lot of information on operating, getting contacts, bit on equipment, and setting up a station. So have a look at that on my website. AK3YE.com will get you there, or VK3YE.com, and it's a book you can get as an ebook on Amazon, or you can get it in paperback. In Australia, though, as a beginner, a light flicker there. In Australia, as a beginner, the equivalent book is the Australian Ham Radio Handbook. So that's the better one to get in Australia. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, I just was holding the light too near the camera. Let's have a look. Yeah, mixing bowl. Lamps much further away. Yes, a lamp further away, it would then need to be brighter. I probably should have a stand. In fact, this light should probably be slightly brighter than it is. I'm using just over 200 LEDs. But it's definitely an advance on what I had before, which is more like that. Okay. Could do with a few more questions. Things have gone a little bit quiet. I saw something. I made a 40 meter J72 IMS, 40 meter vertical using an SO239, soldering 33 feet to the center pin, and putting 4 radials. Yes, that will. And it's slanted on the mast. Yeah, it's probably rather than right up along the metal mast. The metal mast will detune it. It will alter the VSWR. Another thing you might want to do is slope the radials a bit away So they say 45 degrees to the horizontal. Some of the old CB antennas did this. But if you've got the radials sloping away, sloping down, then you can, that will be a better match to 50 ohms. When the radials are horizontal, it's more like 35 ohms. So slightly better match to your coax when the radials are gently drooping down. Okay, question from Chris. What's the highest frequency I have worked DX on? Well, it depends on how you define DX, but if we define it as being outside Australia, then my best would have been on 6 meters on 50 megahertz with a homebrew 3-transistor CW transmitter, crystal controlled, and I had a converter for the radio. I was using an old Geloso valve receiver and had a solid state converter that converted 50 meg down to 14 megahertz. Anyway, it was at the top of the solar cycle a few cycles ago, and I worked a guy in Japan just with half a watt. So that's probably qualifies as my best DX on the highest frequency. He came back to a CQ call that I put out, so it was quite amazing. On 2 meters, I think I've had my whisper detected in New Zealand. I haven't worked New Zealand on 2 meters. On 2 meters, I have worked VK5, VK7, and VK2. Yeah, I've worked in VK1. It's probably about 700 kilometers would be my furthest on 2 meters, I think. On 10 meters, of course, worked Europe and US occasionally. I've done a few videos where I've done that pedestrian mobile, walking along the beach. So yeah, that was just with a little magnetic loop. So I hope that answers your question. ARRL field day and thunderstorms. Well, yeah, maybe you could find somewhere that's, I was going to say magnetic loop indoors. How much should I expect to define the antenna when I have to get close to tune it? I don't understand your question. Define the antenna, detune the antenna. Well, yeah, if you do get very close, then you will detune the magnetic loop. So just have to trial and error. But yeah, magnetic loop would be a fun project when you're locked in. Andy says, what's the, well, with detuning, yeah, depends. If it's a really sharp magnetic loop, which is high Q, good performance, then it might be quite a, yeah, suck it and see. What's the smallest radio I've ever built? I think I built there's a thing called a cubic incher that was in one of the GQRP Club magazines, and I think I built that at least for the transmitter. Yeah, cook yourself. Yeah, magnetic loops, if you are transmitting, keep them as far away as you can, and only QRP. Experience 630 or 2200 meters. Never worked 2200. I have transmitted whisper on 630. I haven't transmitted CW on it. I think I've got a CW transmitter. But 630 is potentially a really good band. It's particularly for local coverage out to about 50 or 100 kilometers. Even though it's harder to build an efficient antenna on 630 meters than it is on 160, the characteristics of the band outweigh that, at least for coverage within your metropolitan area. 50, 100 kilometers, that sort of thing. It's like the AM broadcast band. You tune to the stations down around 600 kilohertz or below, and they've got really good range. Nose up around 1500, they drop off with distance. So yeah, 630 is potentially a really good band. If you've just tuned in, I'm also listening on Echolink on the Friends North America thing. There's VK3YE, I'm there. Hello to Christiania, Virginia, and 73 to you. So good that I'm being heard in Oregon. And glad that you enjoy the videos as well. If you've just joined in, this is live, and you can ask me anything with a emphasis on beginner amateur radio. Minimum instrument used to build an SDR TX RX. Well, I've never built an SDR TX. I've built something that's very crude that gives you a sort of rough idea of an SDR receiver, and that's basically a about 2 or 3 transistors. I've done videos on it. It's basically a very simple direct conversion thing. The problem with that is the audio image. So you see signals on the opposite side of the center frequency, and there's no suppression of it. So you need to be a bit more advanced using phasing techniques, feeding it into both your left and the right channel of your SDR thing. Then you can get a quadrature, so that you can get a proper single signal reception. But yeah, little SDR using a few chips, a few ICs can be a fun project. And yeah, lower frequencies become more like high power audio than RF. Yeah. They tend to follow the ground more. It's ground, whereas ground wave is the primary form of coverage for frequencies in the hundreds of kilohertz region, whereas skywave is more more your HF frequencies, and the ground wave drops off. Okay, so if you're thinking of modules, then the Lime Hack RF makes a good RX TX 101 blog. Yeah, thanks for that. Yep, I've heard of people use them. What was your 630 meter transmitter? From Southeast Queensland, I've listened 630 SSB from Melbourne. Well, 630 transmitter. I think I used a Zac Tech. This is on Whisper. Whisper was anyway, the Zac Tech that I was reviewing, I did a video review on this. Anyway, it could actually operate on a wide range of bands, including 630 meters. You need a different low pass filter, but yeah, that's what I was using. I was probably only using a couple of 100 milliwatts. Chris asks, what was my first rig and antenna setup? Well, it was something from the Stone Ages, something I built. One valve, crystal controlled on 80 meters, and the antenna, I think it was a G5RV and a linked coupled antenna coupler, using variable capacitors from old TVs and things. Oops. So yeah, very basic. And for a receiver, I was using an 8 transistor radio. It's actually in quite a big box, and then I had another transistor radio to operate as a BFO, so I could hear CW and SSB. So I actually made contacts on that. It was very crude, but that was my first rig, homebrew thing. CW on 80 meters. The extra light, yep, thanks for that. It probably should be brighter, but anyway, it's flashing. I should improve the connections to it. I've only got tape holding some of them in. Okay, 22 people watching. You can ask me anything, and I'm Peter, AK3YE, VK3YE. It's middle of winter here, and actually the weather's been not too bad in the last few weeks. Haven't done a lot of portable QRP. In the Northern Hemisphere, though, for those who can get out, yep, certainly would be a bit of fun doing portable QRP with the improved conditions on HF. My books, hand-carried QRP antennas, give you some ideas on portable antennas, so have a look at those on my website. And what was my first commercial rig I bought? I was lent an ex-commercial rig on 2 meters on one of the repeater frequencies. First one I bought was an Atlas, not an Atlas 310, Atlas 210X. Yeah, American rig. And that covered 80 through to 10 meters CW and SSB. So that was the first, very basic bare bones rig, but yeah, that was the first that I had. And it's raining and only 12 degrees. So yep, it sounds like your winter's about the same as our summer. Yep. yeah, often in the middle of winter can have 12 degrees maximum, where yeah, it is a little bit chilly to be out portable. Although if it's sunny and bright, which Melbourne doesn't get a lot of sun in the winter, but other places like Canberra do, and it can get much colder than here, but it can still be quite pleasant to be out. Okay. If you've just joined, ask me anything. I'm Peter, AK3YE, VK3YE. And it's going to be quite a busy day as far as radio goes. I think I've mentioned before, VHF Field Day coming up. If you're in VK, good luck for VHF Field Day. It's a great contest. Get on 2 Motors SSB. What project brought you the most pleasure? Oh, hard to say. The project that you're on and that finishes and that works. Yeah. But yeah, basically something that is, even though they've been gimmicks, some of the recent things I've built just with very simple transmitters have been a bit of fun. Like that 2 transistor transmitter that puts out 20 watts. Okay, well, the signal strength you can get, that's only 7 dB below 100 watt rig, yet it's just 2 transistors, and it is crystal controlled, which can be an issue, but with 20 watts, you can put out quite a good signal and get people coming back to you. So that's been a bit of fun. Simple double sideband gear as well. Have I made balance from VK3YE using Corsum JCar FT240-43? Well, the 43 material is, the standard ferrite material people use. I don't think I have made them. I could be wrong. There's some information on them on Owen Duffy's website, VK2OMD. So that might be a good thing to look at. So yeah. What's your thoughts from Dick Bate about bodies such as Razor WYA for new hams? Sure, they've done some great things. Seems to be a bit of a divide with these groups and no unity. Yeah, I've done quite a few videos on the various bodies and things. I think that we would be better off if there was a single body that was united and had more membership. If you look at history, you had this, if you look at stuff in the 1920s, there were scrobbling amateur radio bodies there, and they ended up uniting. So yeah, I think we're not big enough to have rival bodies arguing with each other. They should just make up, whatever. I think there's issues on both sides, like some aspects about the WYA in the past haven't been all that great. In fact, I was just looking at the WYA website yesterday, and their last board minutes for October 2020, when they should be much better online. They should be updating stuff more. And what does that say about an organisation if your board meeting minutes are 9 months out of date? But anyway, there are some new people on the WIA board that will be starting after today's AGM. So I think there's people that mean well in the WIA. There's been issues in the past. Hopefully they can make the WIA an organisation that people are proud to belong. And they do a lot of good things. Not all of them are necessarily publicised very much, like some of the international representation. A lot of that happens behind the scenes. We do need to be, I'm a professional heckler to these organisations. I have asked one or two questions. And WA should be probably better at promoting itself generally to the amateur community. Yeah, they've got their website. If you look at their YouTube channel, there's not much on there. So yeah, they could engage with people, social media a bit better. What training material for Aussie full advanced ticket, and how close is it to the US extra requirement? Great question. I actually think the US extra is a little bit harder than the advanced in Australia. There are people that have sat the advanced, got the advanced, and failed in the extra. In fact, when I was going for the extra myself, I would do various online exams, and I'd only get about 60% or something in the extra. Just required a bit of updating, particularly the different regulation requirements. Of course, with the American system, it's a bit different. You've got to do the technician general before you do the extra, and the tech and general have a lot of regulations, which in America are quite different to us here in Australia. So you need to be familiar with all those. Do you think the Aussie exam's same as the UK? I don't know a lot about the UK. I think they are roughly fairly similar. You've got, like the UK, we have a foundation license. We have practical exam in the foundation test. As far as training materials go, I have reviewed a book. There's a couple of books. One by Fred Swainston, Radio Theory Handbook, which I think is quite expensive. There's another one by Ron Bertrand. Maybe Ron's is called the Radio Theory Handbook. Anyway, I have done a review of Ron Bertrand's book. It's a big fat book. It takes you to a little bit more advanced than advanced. But yeah, that's probably a good book to get. Sample papers. I think Amateur Radio Victoria still have some resources for that. So you might want to try Amateur Radio Victoria. You might want to try their website. There's some resources there. So see how you go. And 27. So we're up to 27 viewers. So very good. Have I used a speech processor like the DY7 8x7 kit? And would you recommend? I have heard people using them, and they swear by them. They do make a difference. The standard FT817 microphone, you definitely do need to do something with it. By itself, it is not great for the best speech power effectiveness, especially with QRP. I've done a couple of videos. If you have a search of VK3YE on YouTube, I think I call it MH31 FT817. Anyway, try those keywords and you'll get a thing of what I did. But anyway, with the I replaced it with an electret insert, and I get really good comments on my audio. Some people say my audio is thin, and it probably is for your armchair chat type thing. But for getting through the noise and being audible and intelligible, even if my signal's not showing on the S meter, that's what you want for QRP and for rigs like the FT817. And what I did with putting in the new electret microphone, that really helps. So, yep, you definitely do need to do something with the FT817's audio. What I've heard, that German processor is good, or some other modification. So yeah, by all means, do something. Why did I sit the US exam? Well, I had my, I suppose, friend of mine asked me about it, and there was an exam not far away from here, here in Melbourne. And I thought, well, and I was also writing the book, Ham Radio Gets Started, and that was pitched at the American market. So I thought, well, I would have no business writing a book if I haven't, as part of the research for that book, I did a lot more research. So there's a lot of, so that book is basically all US specific. Anyway, so I thought, no, I'd do the exam. So this is only about a month or so before. It was actually just before COVID hit, so I think it was about February last year, yeah, so I was very lucky to get in while I was still doing personal exams. So so did all the exams, Tech, General, Advanced, and got my extra. And I was fortunate to get the call sign AK3YE. So it was with the. I know, some people mention that's a vanity call sign. Some people mention it takes a while to do that. It can be sought after. Did I have to do the Tech General first, or did they accept my Aussie full call? No, you did the whole lot. You might, if I was going to America, they might accept the Aussie full call or whatever. But no, I wanted to do the American exams. And as 101 says, book and video fodder. So I had knowledge of their regulations and exam system. But no, in the US, you do the technician first. They will not let you sit the general until you've got a pass in the tech. And same with the extra. You will not be able to do the extra exam unless you can show you've got a pass in the tech and the general. But if you do that, then because they mark the exams on the spot, you can do them all in the one session. That's one thing. The American exam system, it is much cheaper and a much slicker operation in terms of getting your results very quickly. Whereas in Australia, we have to wait, weeks or whatever, maybe a month or so. And you don't know that you've passed the exam, instantly, whereas with the American arrangements, you do. If you are interested in sitting a American exam in Australia, have a look at the VE exam website, VE Australia, and at least in Melbourne, they've got in-person exams, and probably in other places as well. So to answer your question, Chris, yep, I did have to do the tech and general first. And thanks UK Instant Online. Yeah, I did see a thing from the RSGB. Apparently, that's been a great success with their online exams put in because of COVID. Coffee, hardly. I don't drink this stuff. Malt, yeah, malt's not my favourite. Even Milo with malt. Okay, we have 25 people on. If you've just joined, I'm Peter, AK3YE, VK3YE, and you can ask me anything, especially ham radio beginner questions. I'm also still listening on Echolink on the Friends group. That's been pretty quiet. Friends North America. One side effect with COVID, first contacts have given a few their first or second contact. Yeah, no, that's great. It's good that people are getting on those bands. 12 meters, can be surprising. That's probably the least used of the HF bands, but as conditions improve, that will. In fact, I did a video, I think it was about 6 months ago, where I went down by the river and actually had some good 12-meter contacts. And 17 meters, that's a band that there's a lot of times when 17 is not quite open, but 20 is. But then there are times when 20 is just full of contests, and you want to have a contact, especially for distances a little bit further than what 20 meters will carry. 17 can be a good band. And 30, that's good for DX as well. And also, I think the Americans have a 200-watt power limit on 30 meters. So even if you're running 100 watts, then you're more at less at a competitive disadvantage. Sporadic E, 12 meters. Yeah, people always think of 6 and 10 meters sporadic E, but often 12 meters can sustain contacts as well. Oh, funny story. Local ham looked up history of this call. First holder early 20, sat the exam, had to wait 11 months to get the call. Let's see. I must have better connections to this light. Yeah, there's a period in Australia in 1975 where there was a big strike, and it meant that amateur exams weren't done for months. What was your most complex homebrew build? Probably one of the SSB transmitters I've built. I've got a transmitter that's or transceiver that's just based on the BitX, but it's got a DDS, and that covers 160, 80, and 40. So that's probably the most complex CW and SSB. It puts out, I think, about 7 or 8 watts. I should probably build an amplifier in it. Point the light at the ceiling or bounce down and around. Okay, well, this is the light at the ceiling. As you can see, there's a few shadows, so I don't think that's great. But instead, if I put the light in front of the camera and bounce it at this wall, that's probably about the best. Actually, there's a bit of daylight coming in there, so if I move the camera around, then there's daylight coming in through the window there. But it was almost dark, I think, when I started. But anyway, that's probably about the best. Yeah. There you go. Probably look even better now. I'm at the moment just holding the camera and the light, but I might make some sort of stand. That is just that is part of the light. Okay, getting a little bit thirsty, so I might, if there's, I'll keep a look just in case there are any more questions, but otherwise, oh, Dad Collins says, hi, hello to Jason, Radio on Rails. Yeah, that's a long time ago. Years ago, yeah, that was a contest where he tried to make contacts. Have you thought of doing longer projects like Charlie Morris? Yeah, I admire what Charlie does, but I must admit, attention span. I like the idea of a project that you can build in a day or a few days, and I've got a bit of a backlog. And I think people, especially video viewers, they do like the shorter projects. I've got a bit of a backlog of things. How much activity in Melbourne is there on 11 metres? Well, there has been a bit of sporadic E on 10 metres on lately, so you might even be able to hear some of our people. There's a bit. Usually, when you turn on 27355, there's usually someone talking, or channel 38, 385. In summer, of course, quite a bit. So yeah, usually there's a few people talking. AM, hardly anything. It's all lower sideband. Yeah, ADHD sufferer's dream. Yeah, yeah. Of course, the other benefit of shorter projects is more videos. But yeah, the thing that's taken up my time just yesterday was building this site. Yeah, okay, quite a few activity on channel 38. So that's good. Let's see, it's the WA for people in Australia, the WA AGM is, I think, in just under 2 hours, and people that are members have got their probably got a link in their email. If you're not a member, you can watch them on YouTube, I think. So there's probably a link. Favorite antenna? Oh, I could go on for ages. I could just say you should buy my book, but even then, my 2 books on antennas. But even then, you won't get the answer to what my favorite antenna is. Yeah, basically anything that works and suitable for the frequencies and angle of radiation. More components on the floor. More, yeah, I haven't done any of those. It's been a bit cold in winter. Fun to see smashing stuff up and getting the bits out. Well, of course, that really depends on having stuff to smash, and that usually depends on the curbside collection. In fact, if you want to really live past curbside collection, they are normally in October, November. So just when we go to daylight saving time. Now, there is a section on my website, VK3YE.com. Just trying to find where it is. Tutorials, technical and design. Obtaining parts for free off the street. You know, have a look at that video. There's a whole page on hard rubbish from 2016, 2017, up to 2020. So lots of videos there of me on the ground smashing bits and pieces and looking inside. So I need more junk, like a hole in the head. I do. What's the best find? There was a UHF-CB that an ICOM thing that I found, and I was able to sell it for about $150, I think. Watched all those need a fix. Yeah, we'll watch them again. I was thinking of maybe I could do this light and building this light on the floor, because this light, I'll just give you a better view again. It just dimmed it. It's sort of a beginner's project. In fact, you could build this without any soldering. Yeah, these LED strips come with their leads. So, and this would appeal to someone interested in general electronics, someone starting out, and the light could be useful for the shack and other things as well. Yeah, I was thinking of doing an electronics on the floor on that, but no, I was all inside yesterday and I was building it. So I might make a video on making this. Is that PWM? No, very crude. No, this is PWM is probably the better approach to be controlling your lights, but no, it is very crude. It is just, in fact, now will this show up on the camera? Yes, it does. There is the circuit. For some reason on the screen, it shows up in reverse. So I'm not sure if all you out there watching see that as a properly, or whether it's also in reverse. But that is the control circuit. In fact, there's one extra component that you don't need on it. It's just a VUZ71A. The LED is in the drain circuit. And then there's a 250K pot with the gate. Now that capacitor, that is only if you are putting audio into it. And maybe I'll do a video on this, but I tried this when I had my drone machine, and I pumped audio into, I just connected it across an 8-ohm speaker, and there was enough to modulate the transistor and have the thing flashing with all the different pulsating noises and things. So yeah, if you're into electronic music, this would be a great accessory to connect up to. Another possibility with this circuit, which I haven't tried, would be a bit of fun, would be maybe a maybe 1 or 2 transistors, add them, and then that can drive the FET, and you could have a diode to pick up some RF and rectify it, and then as soon as you press the button on the microphone, then you'd have the light coming on. So that could be a big key down light thing. That would be a bit of fun. Have I done a circuit schematic reading clip? I haven't. How would I do it? Would I have a resistor with a zigzag thing and a capacitor and 2 lines and what a transistor is? Yeah, I have to have a think. Some better light back again. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's really great. Actually, I'll just see what happens. I'll just draw the curtains because there's light coming in. Okay, that's what it's like with most of the curtains. Yeah, so it's probably better with the curtains open a bit. Would be stealing Dave Jones. Well, of course, Dave has about 80 times the viewership than I've got. So yeah, maybe circuit diagrams for hams or something. I don't know. Work your way through a radio schematic. Well, I've actually done a few videos where I do. If you have a look on my website, it's in the tutorials, technical and design. So, yep, there's a few videos that I do talk about circuits. Okay, if you've just joined, I'm Peter, AK3YE, VK3YE, and you can ask me anything. Might be good to do a block diagram. Now, for block diagrams, I did do something. There's a 2-part video series I did on block diagrams, and I was on the ground and I was actually using these boxes, which I used to store components in, Systema containers, food containers, made in New Zealand. And anyway, so it's me on the ground and explaining block diagrams. So yeah, I have done a video on that. And the 4 basic modules are the abbreviation FOAM: filter, oscillator, amplifier, and M was mixer. What's the most power I've squeezed out of a homebrew rig? Well, I have built a linear amplifier. I think that gives about 50 watts. So yeah, if I connect a homebrew rig up to that, then yeah, I suppose that qualifies. Yeah, no, Chris, they've been popular videos. Have you tried a spark gap transmitter? It spreads a lot of extra magnetics. Now, I did do a video on, yeah, I think I did quite recently. It was just using a relay, so I wasn't, was it using a relay or? Well, you could make a very crude spark transmitter if you got 12 volts and ran a bit of coax cable, the braid, along a file, a metal file, and then that will provide a very rough note as you're scraping. And you can also buy from hardware shops, or you put them on drills, but they're basically like these wire brush things. And if you could use that as a rotor thing in a spark transmitter, and you'd produce an uneven tone raspy thing. What's the most difficult obscure fault you've had? Able to fix, yes, able to fix, because more times I give up. I'm not a huge fan of fixing, more build stuff. But yeah, oh, that's interesting. I'm actually getting more light if I use the screen as a reflector. Yeah, okay. Yeah, difficult project, obscure fault. Yeah. I have done I haven't done a huge amount of repairs. But I think of the things that I pulled apart that I could have, that I or someone else could have repaired. That's embarrassing, so I won't talk about them. Okay. now where can we find? I have added a few things to my website lately because people are very interested in homebrew QRP rigs. I've put them all on the same page. So if you have a look at my project site, it's a page of super simple 1 and 2 transistor 7 meg CW transmitters. So that's for just the super simple stuff. And there is a question on, I also put a link to this video on Ham Radio New to the Hobby on Facebook. And a question from Mike Jones, do I run a spider beam? Not as a beam, but I do have a spider beam in the yard that's supporting my antenna, so HF antenna. So the answer is yes. Have I tried HackRF? I should do, but no, I haven't. What test equipment? Oh, did I build one of those simple Dick Smith single band SSB CW rigs? Yeah, no, they were from the late 80s, early 90s SSB rigs. And I would either have not afforded them, or I would have stuffed it up if I did solder it, as it was quite an advanced project, a lot of soldering and whatever. So probably to the good that I didn't get one. What did I take apart that caused me the greatest grief in the family? Well, it was when I was about 7. There was a electronic video game. In fact, that's the only electronic game I had as a kid. It was the only electronic game I had as a kid. But anyway, the thing called Einstein. It was like a combination thing. I think some of them, they called them Simons, but I think the original was called Simon, and Einstein might have been a knockoff. But anyway, the idea was that there were 4 buttons, and it would make noises, and there were 4 different colors: red, blue, green, yellow, and you'd have to repeat. It was a memory testing game, and so it would send you did, and you'd have to press the buttons in the same sequence that they were given. And anyway, I pulled that apart, and that was that did not go down at all well. That was pretty backward. That used TTL ICs and ordinary just light bulbs. Anyway, many years later, I think a couple of years ago, I found one and ordered it, and so I gave it back to my mum. So yes, she now has an Einstein. Anyway, I did a video on that, so have a look at my video on Einstein, and where I look inside that very basic electronic kit. Yeah, but that's probably the one that caused most grief. What test equipment do I own? I actually own more than I use. I'm a bit slack with test gear. Like, I hardly ever use the oscilloscope, but I should. And Nano VNA, there's the HF Signals one, that I reviewed. The antenna analyzer. Multimeter, of course, gets most use. General coverage receiver, or like the one in the FT817. Field strength meter. Yep, that gets a lot of use. Light bulb tuned for maximum brightness. Yeah. So yeah, a few bits of test gear. Oh, the other thing is the an inductance capacitance meter, really handy. LCR 45, which I reviewed. Okay. Yeah, HackRF. Yeah, I should get into all that, but I haven't. And if you've just joined, this is Ask Me Anything, and I'm Peter, AK3YE. That's my American call, and VK3YE. What's my favorite piece of gear to come out of Tandy? Radio Shack in the States. Maybe a science fair electronic kit. Had a lot of fun with that as a kid. 150 in one. One with all the springs and the components. I also pulled that to bits, which I shouldn't have done. I did have a DX160 shortwave receiver. That was surprisingly good. It did drift a bit on 10 meters, and its image response wasn't all that great up there. But for 160 meters, the AM broadcast band, lower HF bands, that was quite good. So yeah, I've had one or two Tandy scanners. Yeah, I have a reputation of ripping things apart and making videos. Yeah, because yeah, with ripping things apart, another thing is they actually take up less space. If you get rid of the case and then you just have all the printed circuit boards, you can have them in boxes. And yeah, and when I want a bit, I just go through them and take off the bit from the circuit board. I usually keep the parts on the board. It's a bit more robust. Now, I've spoken, even though this video is supposed to be for beginners in amateur radio, no one has asked a question or mentioned the topic of Baofengs. Why not? So I have to make up a question. Should I buy a Baofeng? And what's the best Baofeng to get? What was the last thing? Yes, stripping a board is therapeutic. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, especially there are times when you can't be bothered. You can't be bothered building something or starting a new project, but taking something apart requires a bit less mental energy. What was the last thing using tubes, valves? Well, probably. I think it was my 12 volt. That's been a really popular video. My 12 volt one tube AM radio. So uses 12 volts high tension. Okay. 12 volts high tension and 12 volts on the filament, yet it works, and it's a tube radio. And yeah, so I've done a couple of videos on that. I don't think I've done anything with valves more recently than that. 1500 watt on a Baofeng. Yes. Well, yes, yeah, it's amazing. In fact, I saw something on VK7HH's channel about with Baofengs. I think it might have been in the comments that they basically say to the printer of the carton, what power do you want to be printed on it or something for the knockoffs. So yeah, they would certainly keep your head warm, 1500 watts. And maybe the derision, fear of derision. Well, I don't have any fear of derision on yet. No. Yeah, so I'm happy to mention the B word. But yeah, as far as a model, to answer the question I've asked before, I have a UV82, and that's been a bit of fun. I've had some quite good contacts with it. I've done some videos where I've just walked, gone pedestrian mobile and used much better than the rubber ducky antenna. I'm just using a squid pole, having a dipole, vertical dipole. What's the antenna called? It's the flower pot antenna. Flower pot, that's right. It's a 2 meter vertical dipole, and that will give you some good coverage. What are other cheap Chinese brands that I've played with? I haven't really. There's Ziju, starts with an X, QRP rig, which I haven't tried. So I can't comment on them. I have got a multi-PSK for Windows. No, I haven't tried it. Hopefully someone else has and can answer. I have got a rig that is branded 10 Tech, but I think it's a Chinese rig. It's the R4020. It's a 40 and 20 meter CW transmitter. Haven't used it for a while, but it's a nice little rig if you're going out portable for CW on those two bands. So yeah, it's funny how, you know, the cost of equipment is, you know, so much less. Any tone is recommended. Yeah. How long were you in SWL before I took the exam? Probably about 5 years or so. You know, started with listening on the shortwave broadcast bands, and then later on heard this duck talk and discovered amateurs and built some little receivers and things. Yeah, about 5 years. Now, what am I seeing here? Here we are. Here we are. Here's a note from Hayden VK3YE. Did I see this thread on QRZ? Okay, there's a thread on QRZ about YouTube channels. So, yeah, okay. Well, of course, oh, look, there's 11 pages on, no doubt there'll be a fun read, or maybe something you could read before you go to bed. But on the QRZ forums, there's 11 pages on YouTube channels, and it starts off with a guy saying they applaud it. They've become sales tools versus informational. Yeah, okay, go and buy my books. All right, VK3YE.com, and like it on Facebook. All right, that's the sales bit. But yeah, improving the content, fast forwarding through all the chats, live stream kind of stuff to get to the meat of the content. All right. Well, no, I think he's and hours of waffling for about 10 minutes of information. No, I think he's got a reasonable point there. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, personally, I prefer watching a video that's like 5 or 10 minutes than than something like this. Like something like this, you can waste a lot of. You can use a lot of time. Like this is, I've been sitting in front of here for, I don't know, maybe an hour, just over an hour. Redcom, the mag to help you get to sleep. That's a bit unfair. Redcom have, they have had, have some good projects and things. I don't mind Redcom at all. But yeah, in terms of YouTube and information, I agree. It's probably better to search on YouTube for a specific topic, video on a specific topic, and I tend to prefer making videos, one topic, one video, rather than jump from topic to topic. But people do still seem to occasionally appreciate the occasional live stream, so that's what I'll do. So yep, I plead guilty to promoting my books and doing the odd live stream, but there are also plenty of videos that are just on the single topic. But yep, there's whole 11 pages on QRZ if you want to read that thread. So thanks to Hayden of Ham Radio DX fame for pointing me to that thread, VK7HH. Okay, 24 people still on. So yep, it's if you've just joined, I'm Peter, VK3YE, AK3YE. Yep, and yeah, waffle, ham, yeah, Chris, yeah, and waffle about our medication, etc. 5 Peter's books, yeah, all right. Yeah, there's 8 of them now, so yeah. Do you have a favourite radio book? Ones that I've written. No, seriously. Favourite radio book? Well, Solid State Design for the Radio Amateur would have to be up there. Depends on what you want. Amateur Radio Techniques by Pat Hawker is an old book that was pretty good from the RSGB. And that's was also a great column that appeared in Radcom for years and years. I've been in contact. His third harmonic was stronger than his fundamental. He was using a 7000 or 7100. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. That's a bit of a caution. If you try and open up HF rigs, yeah, it might say on the dial that it can cover up 630 meters, but the low pass filter will be at, at best 1.82 megahertz. So you will be getting harmonics. You should, if you do open up the, if you do open up an HF rig and use it on 630 meters, make sure you build a low pass filter for 500 kilohertz, and that will avoid you becoming a broadcast station. You'd be having harmonics on 950 and and up. So yep, definitely filtering is important. And yeah, so software collection for radio equipment on tight. Mention the semiconductor book, yeah. Just how the LEDs. Oh well, this is the longest I've had this LED light, and it's not getting hot, so that's okay. There's a bit more light coming in. In fact, it's actually sunny. I really probably should go out. I've been talking for over an hour. There's a few other things coming up. Is there any alternative method for ferrite rods cores instead of ferrite? Well, are you talking on the GQRP rally? Don't think so. I am booked to do something for, I think it's coming up in August, 4Z1UG virtual Hamfest thing. So look out for something there. How active are 2 meter and 70 centimeter repeaters in Melbourne? I hear more on 7025 CW. I think they are fairly, there's probably, maybe a couple that are fairly active. I must admit that most of our repeaters now have subtones, and the rig that I use on 2 meters, it's just an ex-commercial thing, that doesn't have the subtone. I do have a little oscillator, but it's outboard. These days I just, it's a bit of, probably too much light now with the sun come up. Okay. Yeah, so I just leave it on 146.5, and I wouldn't call it active. You hear activity most days. Are you into 3D printing? Yeah, one of those things I should be, but I'm not. But yeah, a lot of potential to be making a lot of custom-made things for QRP and antennas, like dipole insulators and things. I just, I must admit I'm more into chopping up kitchen chopping boards for that sort of stuff. But yeah, no, there's a lot of scope for a lot of QRP accessories and even Morse keys and things. So yeah, I should be, but just one of those things I haven't got around to. Alternatives to ferrite. Yeah, I've heard of balance that are just wrapped around, air cord balance. Yeah, coil formers. Yeah, coil formers used to be those things that a lot of projects specified them, then they became unobtainable. But 3D printing makes all that possible again. So, yeah, certainly a lot of potential for ham radio homebrew. Okay, well, I've been going on for an hour. Haven't had a drink, so thanks for joining me. And yeah, I'll occasionally do a Ask Me Anything segment. If you've just missed, I'll leave this on so you can watch the whole thing on my YouTube channel, if you're game to, after reading that QRZ thread. In the meantime, I'll get a drink, and information about my books on my website, VK3YE.com, and don't forget to like VK3YE on Facebook. So have a good evening, morning, afternoon, daytime and night, and talk to you all later.